can't wait to have this conversation with you.
I'm super excited. It's took us a while to connect and mesh those schedules, but baby, now that we got it, we are ready to rock. And yes, just raise some awareness and bring some education to the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on here and talking to us today. I have a whole bunch of questions for you, and I can't wait to dig into your story and the way that you are working and helping people. However, I would like to start with knowing where you are.
Right. Where am I in this world? So I am here in Scottsdale, Arizona. I've been here for about a year and a half. Everyone that knows me probably knows me from Denver. That's my home. So
Okay.
I went from freezing cold and now I'm at raging hot. So that's where I'm at right now. I've been soaking up all the moisture. Now
Mhm.
I'm cooking 24/7. It's either hot or hotter here
So a
in
person of
Arizona.
extremes.
Yes, yes. And I'm loving the heat. The heat is definitely serving me way better than the cold.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, thank you for that. I'm wondering, we heard about you and what you do in our introduction, but I'm wondering if you can kind of put it in your words and tell us what you do.
I know. What do I do? Who am I? What am I all about? Well, I was freezing in Denver in the mountains. Now your girl roasting over here in the desert. I specialize in women's hormones, specifically when it comes to endometriosis, PCOS, and fibroids, specifically because it is my own journey with endometriosis. It took me 16 years to get diagnosed. So as we chat about, the story and the journey, that's what really shifted my practice is my own healing journey where I was not getting, wins. I was out saying one thing, but then suddenly what I was saying on stages wasn't working for my body, and it really just
Mm.
shifted and pivoted my world. So that is
Wow.
what I do. A lot of you may have known me from Instagram, a little bit from TikTok, but just raising awareness and really educating, empowering, motivating people that they can live an amazing life despite their diagnosis.
That's really beautiful. Now, and you said it shifted the way you felt about what you were saying on stages. So let can I ask about that?
Let's
What's
talk
going
about
on
that.
there?
Yes. So in my prior life, it was fitness, LJ. And it's so funny every time I tell the
Oh.
story. I came from a background strong in fitness and women's health. And it wasn't that nutrition and all that wasn't important. Hormones weren't important. It was just more, to be honest, focused on the aesthetics, right? What can we do to lose the 5 pounds? What can we do to, get those hips right? What can we do to have more energy? And essentially all that traveling, and I loved what I did. And it was all fitness based, creating programs, opening gyms, all of this. And so
Amazing.
what happened is all that I was talking about suddenly stopped working for me. As I got older, your girl got wiser, more mature, those little gray hairs, everything started popping in, those hormones started shifting. The whole over exercise and under eat and always the go, 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 the rat race, it wasn't working for me any longer. Suddenly, the under eating, the over exercising, that allopathic, mindset of if there's a problem, grab a prescription, then we'll bring in the homeopathic,
Mm.
the natural after.
Yep.
It wasn't working for me. I was in debilitating pelvic pain 24/7. I had period pain. I was passing out during my cycle, the murder scene periods. I had all of these
Wow.
systems essentially shutting down in my body. And so it came to a point where I loved what I did, but like I keep circling back to, it was no longer working for me. The
Yeah.
mindset, the nutrition, the fitness, the go, 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 the type A that we were talking about before we got on the camera, right? The analysis by over paralysis, all of those things really started to catch up with me.
Wow. That's really cool. I'm almost getting this visual of you just being like brilliant out there in the world, being with this energy you're bringing, this go go go, this like brilliant unicorn, and then like your cycle like jumping up and grabbing you. Like,
Essentially hiding in plain sight, right? I was
yeah.
either on stage going a million miles an hour and changing the world and doing all these amazing things, or on
Yeah.
my bathroom floor crippled with period pain, on my
Oh
bathroom
man.
floor not being able to walk, having hot flashes, all of these things. So there was no happy medium. It was either totally amazing or totally horrible. And so that is what really shifted everything for me because I no longer had quality of life. And I want to circle back to saying, like I said, it was hiding in plain sight. You only knew the
Yeah.
LJ that showed up on camera, but the person behind the camera is the one that was truly suffering and just had no life, to be honest.
Yeah. That's a whole niche. I don't know how you choose to say that word. I choose to say niche. Um, that in and of itself is a whole niche, isn't it? Like, an entirely different subject that's very related though, but a niche of like, I wonder how many influencers and prominent personalities we have out there that are suffering that badly behind the scenes. We know, and we talk about them suffering from, I don't know, abusive relationships, like we saw with the, what was it, Gabby, whoever. And then they've got like one life on camera and this terrible thing happening off camera. It's a total niche though, to be thinking about like women that are in the health and fitness space that are suffering hardcore because of their hormones off camera.
Right. And that's the thing. We don't want to, you want to hold up this facade, right? And let's just
Of
talk about
course.
Instagram. Like, I have an Instagram account, but I'm very transparent. And not that I was being fake or that I wasn't being dishonest before, but before I didn't know it was okay to not be okay.
Yep.
Before I didn't know it was okay to be like, hey, Carrie, I know you gave me this amazing project and we have these things to do, but my body, like something's going on. I didn't feel comfortable enough to kind of put that guard down, to not always wear that superwoman cape. And it's one of those things, when you get into the work industry and you're doing the things and you're that boss babe, you don't want that weakness, you don't want that transparency to come through, because people will take advantage of it. But then for me, I didn't want to be the person in the health and wellness space that wasn't the picture perfect health and wellness. It's so interesting.
Yeah.
I was looking at a vacation thing, and I'm going to start teaching some classes, and in the description, it was very, the way they put it, it kind of made me think. They were like making sure, it was like, make sure you have your certifications, make sure you have your first aid, CPR. And then, I mean, I hate to call the company out, but they were like a picture of health and wellness. And I started thinking, what is a picture of health and wellness? So
Yeah.
I know that you couldn't put in your description, must be this weight, this height, this look. But
Mm.
essentially, what you just said was that, a picture of health and wellness. So, like I said, not calling the company out, but we all had that mindset. We had to look a certain way, we had to operate in a certain way. And so, but yeah, your Instagram, your social media was just those picture perfect days. I wasn't going to get on there and talk about, how I had this horrible pelvic pain. I wasn't going to get on there and talk about how I was taking birth control because I felt like I had no other option. I wasn't going to get on there and say, gosh, I'm so glad you guys came to class today. I passed out this morning, but I crawled over and got dressed and now I'm here. People would be like, what? Like, they don't want to hear that. They just want to hear the
Yeah.
positive stuff. And so, especially in the last few years, it's became to where we don't want to just hear about your amazing vacation and see your perfectly curated, home. Like, we want to see the messy, right? We want to
Yeah.
see what's going on behind the scenes. And for me, honestly, once I became more transparent that, hey, I'm suffering, that things aren't perfect over here. I'm a single mother, not able to take care of my children. I can't go to work some days. Hey, I have an amazing business and I had to take a break from my business because of my health. Then, to be honest, that's when my business actually went to the next level. It wasn't
Yeah.
when it was picture perfect LJ, everything, perfectly curated. It's like, I wake up some days and I feel amazing, and other days I don't feel so amazing, right? And I have to rely on my support system. But it's finding that comfort in being like, okay, it's okay to not be okay. And I think some of us have sat there and it took us a while, but now what are we going to do about it? And I'm more to, especially when it comes to endometriosis, we like to throw around the term endo warrior. And my thing now is, endo warrior is great, right? You get up every day, you're at war with your body, you're pushing past the pain, you're doing all the things. But
Yeah.
let's be honest, for me, that's a chronic illness. We're going to be at
Mm.
war 24/7. I'm going to be honest, baby. I'm 43. I'm tired. I'm tired of being at
Yeah.
war every single
Yeah.
morning, every single day. So my goal really is to take you from endo warrior to endo conqueror. Now, that is not
Mm.
going to happen overnight. It didn't happen overnight for me. It took me 16 years to get my diagnosis. But now that's what I do with my patients, is really putting you in the driver's seat of your health. I get very passionate about it because it changed my world. But looking back, I'm like, gosh, if I would have just stepped into this power and this knowing, which is why I raise so much awareness, because many people, we're just normalizing the pelvic pain, we're normalizing the period pain, we're sweeping everything under the hormonal rug and
Yep.
just hoping and praying that, that one supplement that we've seen on Instagram is going to change our world. And it typically doesn't work that way. It's just, once again, when we come down to the 100% real, it's just not that simple.
Yeah. It's interesting too that, you talk about your age and getting vulnerable and getting real about this happened for you in the past few years. Is that right?
Right.
Yeah. So
So
I mean,
it
there's a maturity in that, right? Like maybe you were
absolutely.
ready to fully show yourself at that age.
I think, right, it comes with that wisdom. I know, and
Yeah.
I say 43 like it's way out there, but
Yeah.
it has been a developing thing for me. And it's been interesting looking at my healing journey as well. Part of the healing was talking about what was going on. Part of the healing was not sitting in silence.
Yes.
Part of the healing was, you know, talking to my boss when they're like, hey, we wanted you to do this thing, and being like, you know what? I've got to take some time for me. I've got to take some time for my family. If not, because what would happen is I'd go, 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 go. As you can see,
Yep.
energy is kind of my signature, but I just would like that energy would go. And what happened is I wouldn't take time for myself. I would ignore the pain. I would
Yep.
ignore the acne. I would ignore this, that, and the other. I had a pill for every ill. And then eventually it's like I had all these supplements. I had zero quality of life. And I'm like, okay, great. I'm going to do a speech tomorrow about how to rev up your metabolism, but I put on 18 pounds in the last month. Maybe the rev up metabolism seminar is it needs to be revamped because it
Yeah.
clearly is not working for me. And I'm going to places and people are congratulating me on expecting, and I'm like, I'm not expecting. I'm just super bloated, right? It's a
Yeah.
very humbling experience where you're like, okay, I got to go back to ground zero and figure out what is really going on here.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think that that is a very, unfortunately, common experience amongst women, successful women
Hmm.
that are kind of in the limelight or not, just super present in their lives and in their work, and not really necessarily having the vocabulary to like make space for their cycles and for the way
Hmm.
that they are, like, for themselves essentially, and what they're going through, and trying to power through, and like you said, take pills anytime there's something wrong, as opposed to like stopping, resting, nurturing and healing yourself in the way that you need to. So
It's tough. It's not something yeah, I mean, I bow my head and I think, I'm like, it didn't happen overnight. It was a long process. And
yeah.
so it's being able, I would say community is huge. Having a
Yeah.
community, having someone that that not only can support you, but someone that'll be like, hey, you're doing too much. You know,
Mm,
hey, do you need some help with something? But also for us super women, right, that like to wear the cape and carry the cross, not only
yeah.
for ourselves, but our children, our partners, girlfriends, boyfriends, whoever, to also know that it's okay to be like, I need help. And I think
Yeah.
that is huge, that we're okay with asking for help when it comes to our career. We're okay with asking for help when it comes to all these other things. But when it comes to us kind of letting ourselves be more transparent when it comes to our health, we really look at it as a form of weakness. However, if your girlfriend texts you right now and was like, oh my gosh, I'm having such a bad day, my back's hurting, this, that, and the other, we'd be like, oh girl, don't even worry about it. Don't go, you shouldn't go to the gym today. You should probably do
Yeah.
some self-care. But if someone told us that, we're like, oh no, 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 no. I've got this project to do. I've got this, that, and the other. My boss
Yeah.
is counting on me. So we give everyone in our world the grace, yet we won't even give it to ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. And I definitely can see what you're saying about like an uptick in connecting with your audience and up
Mhm.
leveling your business once you decided to get vulnerable. I have a funny story of being asked to speak at a women's conference at one point, and it was one of my first and larger gigs that I've done, talking about mindfulness, and very like basic level, like here's a few meditation, breathing techniques, whatever. But in the intro, what I chose to do to kind of contextualize myself and what
Mhm.
mindfulness has done for me, I realized when I was kind of prepping my presentation that I take pictures of myself in those low moments, like selfies of me, like crying with no makeup on. And I always thought it was like some weird little tick, like your dirty little secret, right? That I would take. Felt like, who the hell does that, right? Like, who wants to document it? But it was a drive. And then I realized that, like, actually I think I instinctually did that because I was going to do something with that one day. So at this conference, what I decided to do, my big power move in this, and really claiming this space in my life to be a vulnerable speaker and to be like authentic and truly connect with an audience, is that, yeah, I introduced myself as, I'm a business owner and a mom, and like all the wonderful things and all the beautiful headshots. And then I
Right.
said, but I'm also this. And I showed those pictures of me crying. And people were like, you could hear, oh, like a gasp, but like, because it was kind of screwed up. But, and then like maybe a couple
But think
people that
about the level
knew
of
me, like,
respect. All of a
yeah,
sudden,
no,
they were like, I can relate to you. Like,
it was so
she's me.
impactful. Yeah, I had
Yes.
people coming up to me after like, thank you for showing that. Like, I thought I was the only one that took weirdo pictures of myself crying. So yeah, but with you, okay, I want to take it way back for you to the very beginning of your relationship with your cycle.
My relationship with my cycle, I'll never forget when I first started my period. My dad came home and like gave me a card and big like, "Congratulations, welcome to womanhood." And I was like, okay. I mean, I didn't know what this was, but whatever, right? But think about like I'm 12 years old. I'm just starting my period. Like you're
Mm,
just figuring out your body. You're like, I was playing at the park and I stink. You're like, what is going on? So I just remember that weird transition. But at the age of 14, it really took a turn for me. I'm talking
mm,
about chronic period pain, doubled over, not being able to go to school, having accidents, being in sports, doing great in academics. But I
yeah,
mean, just little things as I date myself, as back in the day, you'd run the bleachers, right? You're out there
yeah.
doing all the things. But it's like there were days I couldn't breathe. There were days that when my period came, everyone else would, maybe be a little bloated or they, wouldn't wear white shorts. But for me, it stopped my world in my tracks. My asthma would be out of control. I was wheezing, I couldn't breathe. And it got to where every time my period came, none of my regular medication worked. And so I want to
Mm,
really hone in on that because a lot of people with endometriosis, they're just kind of like, oh, it's a period thing. And that's the biggest thing. We'll definitely define endometriosis, but it's not just a period problem. It's not a rogue period. It's not a reproductive disorder. It's chronic systemic inflammation throughout your entire body. So for
mm.
me, what turned out to be, more of a period issue was something bigger than that. I was passing out during my cycle. I'd pass out at school. I was overheating. I was having hot flashes. Like think about being
Yeah.
14
At
years having hot
14, yeah.
flashes.
God.
So, but this is the thing, you're 14. You don't know what you don't know. You don't know that this is
Yeah.
normal. 2 years ago, your dad just congratulated you on welcome to womanhood. So you're just like, here I am, here I go.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I was having hot flashes, horrible acne, lots of vision issues, lots of ENT issues, ear, nose, and throat issues,
Mm.
always having a chronic sinus infection. It was like I was the person that was always sick. Someone could be
Yeah.
sick 2 classrooms away, cough, and somehow I was ill. It didn't
Mm.
matter if I was around them. I mean, it sounds extreme, but I always had an issue. My immune system was under attack. I remember having a conversation with my mother and explaining to her that I was having period pain. I remember a distinct moment. I hate to tell this story, but it's true,
Please do tell
where
your
I
story.
called and I was in the office, and that's back in the day where we had the old school recorders, right? My mom had this like fun recording and all this, and I left a message that I had another accident. I was in pain. I wanted to come home. She didn't answer, so I suffered for a little bit, and you sit in the nurse's office. I called a neighbor. Neighbor came and picked me up, bought me all this stuff, brought me some chocolate, took me home, only to discover my mother was there, heard the recording, gave me a stern talking to of number one, that I was a strong black woman, that I did not feel pain, that I needed to keep pushing past it. Also, being in a religious household, that, if I had a stronger faith with God, I was a PK, that if I had stronger faith, I just need to lean into God, it'll be fine. But I was like, I literally passed out. Like I'm in
Yeah.
pain, but you're telling me I don't feel pain. So at the age of 14, I was at the point where I knew it was not okay to complain or even
Mm.
voice. And it wasn't that I was complaining, I was miserable. I was in pain. I couldn't function. I was the oldest of four. And so for my mother, once again, not to bash, but for her, she didn't have time for the oldest child to be complaining about what she thought was period pain because she
Yeah.
had never had that pain. So I was told to really like toughen up buttercup and keep pushing. And that's what I did for years. Now, once I got older and got into college, yes, I remember getting Kaiser, my first insurance, making my own appointments, kind of being in that adulting. But then it
Yeah.
was the same dismissive behavior from doctors.
Yep.
Once again, you say period pain, they're like, I got a birth control for you, right? You're saying bladder pain, here's an antibiotic for your, UTI. But here's the thing. I was on years and years of antibiotics, went to the urologist. And I think for a lot of people also, when you're getting diagnosed with endometriosis, it's almost like a diagnosis of exclusion. After
Mm.
they've tried everything, I repeat, everything else, then they're like, you know what? Maybe it's endo. And for me personally, as I jump ahead, I had to do a lot of research to find my own diagnosis. So it wasn't just all the book knowledge and going to college and all of these things, right? Education is important. But let me tell you, when you're awake at 2 or 3 a.m. every morning in pain, nothing to do. I mean, that was some of my best research. That was before we were saving trees. I was printing
Yeah.
everything off of, I say Dr. Google. I think back then it was more of AOL. We were on
Exactly. Yeah.
dial-up, baby.
Yeah.
We were dialing up to get that information, the
Yeah.
old school. But for me, I had to do a lot of research. And so what started off as a period issue began to tear down every system in my body. I had chronic pelvic pain 24/7, lots of unexplained joint pain, lots of unexplained joint issues, a lot of bowel issues, chronic constipation, then diarrhea, all of these issues. I had a lot of GI pain,
Hmm.
a lot of inflammation throughout my entire body. So it was really just, a cascade of events. And so as you're listening to this, I'm sure some people are like, oh my gosh, I have endo. That's my story. And then others are kind of like, oh, I have all these things happening to me. And I
Yeah.
never made the connection. And so it was a long, long journey. It took me 16 years to get my diagnosis. And even then, it was like a breath of fresh air, right? Like I could inhale, exhale. I had a diagnosis, but then it was like, then what? And then that
Yeah.
was like the whole slap in the face of, oh, there is no treatment, there's no cure. So do you want to go back on the birth control? Do you want to go back on the narcotics? But I had done that for years and it was not helping me in any way.
Gosh, okay. That's very rich and very, very in a way triggering. Taking it back to the thing. Well, first of all, your dad giving you a card. I
Right?
love that. Okay, so I feel like we're like twinning out here. I'm 43. My mom gave me a
Oh,
card when
wow.
I got my first period at 12.
Fun, fun,
Yeah,
fun.
you're the only other person I've met who got a congratulatory card for it. And I felt like
Yes.
so embarrassed by that. Like, why would you give me this? But I always say, like, it planted a seed in my head that it was something to be proud of. And then it was
Hmm.
just like, shut up. But unlike you, I did not suffer from periods like that. And I'm wondering, your mother, because like I have daughters who are they're turning 13 next week.
Hmm.
And I try to strike a balance between not getting into the narrative of periods are supposed to be painful and it's like this terrible thing. There's a lot of there's a real vibe out there, and on TikTok, like, we've got more awareness on social media now than ever about
Absolutely.
periods and what that is. And even some of the organizations that are really dedicated to raising this awareness are doing it in a way that's somewhat negative, like the language around it, and like, oh,
Hmm.
it sucks to bleed, so it hurts and whatever. So with my daughters, I try to strike a balance between like not feeding into that and helping them to, like, if you're feeling uncomfortable, you're bleeding, like that is normal to feel some discomfort, but then also striking a balance between not normalizing this idea that it's just gonna hurt, with actually listening to them as well, and trying to figure out,
Hmm.
okay, what is going on here? Like, is this an abnormal level of pain? And then what the hell do you do about it? Because
Hmm.
I'm not someone that suffered from it. So this is very interesting for me to hear your story about this. And yeah, so I am wondering how you went from, okay, a long-standing suffering relationship with your cycle
Hmm.
that you couldn't find help with and you were trying to heal yourself, and then finally getting your diagnosis, and then I don't know, did it turn into masking it? Like, how do you get into a fitness career from that? Like, how do you go from full body attack to fitness
Right.
career?
So I had been in fitness. So going backwards, this is a good question. So reversing back, I graduated high school when I was 15 years old. I went straight to college. So
Nice.
at the age of 15, I was in college. My whole fitness career pretty much started when I was about 17 years old.
Wow.
So I was in fitness this entire time, suffering, showing up to classes, killing
Jeez.
it, teaching at Cycle Bar, Orange Theory, all of these big companies. I was writing their programming, running these classes. So
Wow.
while I was doing all this fitness and traveling, I was still dealing with endometriosis. Now, even when I got further into my career and higher up the ladder, I'd been diagnosed, but I was still dealing with a lot of the chronic pelvic pain, the painful sex, the murder scene periods, like all of these things. My body was just, by that point, I'd say more in my 30s, it had gotten to like enough was enough. It wasn't just
Mm,
pelvic pain. I was, bleeding all of the time. I was
God.
cramping all of the time. I was always the person that had, the imaginary UTI, but not really. Like I had all the UTI symptoms, the pins and
Mm,
needles, the pain, all of that, but then they'd run the culture. I wouldn't have a UTI. But my doctor felt so bad for me, they'd give me an antibiotic because they're like, well, you're always in here, right? I just had chronic issues, and then it just kind of started to tear down different systems, a lot of joint pain, a lot of inflammation. And this is while in my fitness career. So I had to really shift. Once I got my diagnosis, it was a lot of masking with pharmaceuticals. It was a lot of trying different procedures, different birth control, different this, that, and the other surgeries. And it wasn't bringing me any relief. And so I always tell people in all transparency, I don't demonize medications. I don't demonize pharmaceuticals. They can be a part of your healing journey. But for me, they didn't work. I got discouraged. I had no quality of life. There were days I couldn't get up and take care of my own children. There were days I slept on the couch, not because the couch was amazing. It's because I didn't have the energy or the strength to get up the stairs to go to my own bedroom. So for me, the quality of life was kind of stopping. I had to give up an amazing career. I had this great job, 6-7 figures, bonuses, all of this. 2 weeks later, I had to go back in tears and hand the job back and explain to them that what they thought was just LJ and her period problems was like a serious problem to my entire body, and I wasn't going to be able to show up and fulfill that position. So at that point, I had scheduled a hysterectomy because I had bought the misconception that endometriosis is a period problem, right? So I was thinking, okay, yank out all my lady parts and I'll be better. And I had suffered for years. So you'll have to remind me, we should definitely, as I tell the story, we should define endometriosis, but that was one of the misconceptions. Have babies or yank out everything and you'll be better. So for me, the turning point was scheduling the hysterectomy. They couldn't get me in for 6 or 7 months. And so real talk, as a single mother, I sat down at my table and I'm like, okay, I've got to be able to make enough money for 6 or 7 months, make it to surgery, and then have enough money to also, about a year's worth of income needed to come in about 6 months. And so for me, that's what shifted my entire world, because that's when I started to do more research, not only about endometriosis, but pelvic pain, hormonal imbalances. And that is where I really made some huge shifts in my nutrition. That whole mindset of eat 6 times a day, rev up your metabolism. We're living on plain old chicken breast and broccoli. All of that crap that I'd peddled for years, I had to push to the side because it wasn't working. I was gaining weight doing all of those things. I was teaching classes and putting on, weight all the time. I was always inflamed. I was always in pain. And so in that 6 to 7 months, I made some huge shifts to where when I came in for pre-op, my doctor was like, what's going on? Like, you're doing better. What's going on? And so I talked to him about the changes that I had made about my nutrition, changes to my fitness routines, mindset, etc. And I'll never forget, he was like, shocked. He was like, he brought in his mentor to make sure we were looking at the same things and we're looking at everything side by side, and so many drastic changes. He's like, well, whatever you're doing is working. And so at that point, I opted to cancel my hysterectomy. So even at the age of 43, I had not had a hysterectomy. I will never get a hysterectomy, but I was able to change my entire world. So yeah, when you think about it, that 6 to 7 months pivoted my entire world, right? I couldn't get back on the stage and talk about how eating 6 times a day, plain chicken breast and broccoli was going to heal your hormones. I had learned that healthy fats, right? I had never, ever did fats. We came from the fitness mindset of, I don't want to be fat, so I don't eat fat. I'd never had coconut oil, olive oil. So I had to make some huge shifts. So I had to step away from what I was doing to really heal myself naturally. But when I came back, then I could no longer in good conscience, travel around just telling everyone, well, working out 2 hours a day is going to bring you the body that you need. It's going to balance your hormones. Hey, you got some belly fat. You probably just need to add in some more cardio. Because I just came from a life of where that wasn't working. So when I say shift and pivot, it pivoted everything. It was mind-blowing for me. I mean, I would have felt like a hypocrite, going back and saying some of this stuff. And not that, and like I said, not that I was trying to lead people astray before, but I was giving, these presentations and doing based upon the knowledge I had. But once again, I'm my own main experiment. When it didn't work for me, and I'm definitely results driven, I'm like, baby, we got to go back to the drawing board. So when I came back, that is where I shifted. It was no longer just fitness, what extra class can you get into your day? It was more like, hey, are we talking about stress? Are we talking about hormones? Are we over exercising, right? And now, like I said, that's huge. Coming from shooting 8 hours worth of videos some days, I would travel and, do a seminar, and Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, exercise for 8 hours. That I was there to certify and train you and get you up. And it's so funny. A friend of mine texted me this morning, and she came from the fitness background as well. And she too now helps women who have hormone issues, talking about, perimenopause and menopause.
Mm.
So I feel like we all kind of came from the whole aesthetic fitness. Let's get on stage and these
Yeah.
bikinis with this 2% body fat. But let's talk about how, most people that get on that stage and then 2 months later, they're like 80 pounds heavier, right? Because their thyroid
Yeah.
is shot, their hormones are shot. So that was the biggest shift for me, is scheduling the hysterectomy, changing my world, being able to push the hysterectomy out the door with one of the other misconceptions. That is what the biggest shift was for me. So even though I still had a huge hand in fitness, and I do now, I spend a lot more time on, yes, the aesthetics will come. The belly fat will leave, the acne will leave, this, that, and the other. We're no longer chasing symptoms, which is what I was doing before. Now
Yeah.
it's more about getting to the metabolic chaos, getting to the root of the problem, seeing what's really going on. And then once we get that foundation right, the skin will clear up, the weight will come off, the
Yeah.
inflammation will come off. It's not the way people really want to address it sometimes, because you want that quick fix. I get the emails all
Yeah.
the time. What is the juice cleanse? I had painful sex last night. What detox do I need? If it was that easy, I'd airdrop it to you. It's not
Yeah.
going to be that simple. There's going to be a process, there's work behind it, but it's worth it. And especially when you're dealing with chronic period pain, chronic pelvic pain, and just that feeling of malice where you never ever feel good. And it's
Yeah.
not just around your period, but you get to where you're like, every day I feel like I've been hit by a bus. At
Yeah.
that point, you get sick and tired of getting sick and tired, and you are
Yeah.
ready to make that shift.
Yeah. I'm wondering, because I get the sense that this was a huge professional shift for you as well. Like it was like
Absolutely.
a personal health transformation and then a professional shift. Was there no space for this new LJ, this new experience, the new advice, the changed nutrition, the changed exercise recommendations? Was there no space for that in the job or in the role that you were in? Could you not have just did you try to change it from the inside, I guess, as to like where you were and bring this new knowledge without having to completely like leave and do something else or start a new
Right.
business? Or,
So
yeah.
for me, I had my own business, but I also, so I was, I had my own business, but I was always still an employee for other people. So at that time, the employee LJ that would just show up and push your programming, I
Yeah.
couldn't do it anymore. It wasn't about how much money you were going to put in my bank account, because
Yeah.
that didn't bring back the new LJ. When people were asking me, "Oh my gosh, you look amazing. You've got energy. Like, what's going on?" I couldn't be, "Oh, it's that weight program I've been
Yeah.
pushing." It just wasn't that anymore. So I
But
really shifted more into my own practice.
yeah.
Is that what you're asking?
Well, it's in there. So
Mhm.
this employee that you were, did you
Mhm.
try to change it from them? Did you go to them and like, "Hey guys, I'm bringing something different here. Like this actually is not what I believe is going to help people. Like, do you want to
Right.
update your methodology maybe?" Like, did you try to do it like
That's a
that?
good question. So that makes me think of when I was working behind the scenes with the Extreme Weight Loss Challenge. No,
Uh-huh.
that was not going to be brought to the table. That is
Hmm.
not the agenda that was going to be pushed. That was not what our sponsor, which was Coca-Cola, think about
Uh,
it. We're running a weight loss program and Coca-Cola is our biggest sponsor. I'll let you do the math
that's
there,
already
right?
screwed up. Yeah.
Right. That was not
Wow.
going to be pushed in the new agenda. So that is one of the things. That's why it's so funny. I've never been asked that question. That's one of the things I had to step away from. I had to
Yeah.
step away from the over exercising behind the scenes on some of these major network programs, because honestly, honest to God, I'm reaching out to some of them now. I'm on Facebook with them now. The person that they were when they walked off stage 6, 7, 8 years later, notice we've never did a remake. I'll just leave it at that, right? We haven't
Yeah.
did a reunion, because some of that whole drastic lifestyle, they're just so desperate to lose weight. That doesn't bring lifestyle changes that last a lifetime. It comes under
Yeah.
more of the diet, the gimmick, the gimmicky, the detoxy, whatever. It's more about lifestyle changes. And so for me, I had to make a lifestyle change. It wasn't going to be a 21-day gut
Yeah.
buster situation, 21 days, drop 21 pounds. That was the old mindset.
Yeah.
That was no longer what I could promote, because it wasn't working for me.
And that right there is diet culture, right? Like it sounds
Mhm.
like you were very much before promoting a type of diet culture through this company. And it kind of like makes me like, how dare they? Like how dare they when their best people, it sounds like, are dropping out of the game because no. this isn't what's healthy for us, you know?
Well, and I think it's a balance. I mean, I'm not definitely not shaming either side, but for me personally, I have to
Yeah.
walk the walk and talk the talk. I
Yeah.
don't care how much money
Yeah.
you're going to pay me. I can't sit here and say, I mean, let's be honest, when you see these advertisements and it's like the person that has a six pack, I'm thinking, baby, they just heard about that shake 2 months ago when they got, the
Mm.
ambassadorship. They have not,
Yeah.
the body they have now didn't come from the
Yes.
shake that they're promoting. So
Yeah.
that I know that, but the everyday person, that's on QVC at 2 a.m. in the morning, they don't know that. They're grabbing it, they're doing whatever. So for
Yeah.
me, I had to stay true to what I was doing. And also, as I suffered in silence, I started to see more people come out and was like, oh my gosh, yes, my period is a thing. I hear my
Yeah.
patients and clients all the time talk about how they miss 5 to 7 days of work a month. I mean, when you think about it, you think you're a full-time employee, but when you start thinking about all the PTO you have to take, and let's talk about the days that you're missing that you're not able to use PTO because you're out of
Yeah.
PTO, that's when you're just like, the gimmicky stuff doesn't sound as appealing then, right? It's not
Yeah.
really going to be a 21-day fix. It has to be a true lifestyle change.
Yeah. Gosh. Oh, that's a lot.
It
That's all a
is.
lot. It's a very intense story. And so much to learn from that. So let's talk about then after, yeah, the solution of this, right? So yeah, what did
The
that look like?
solution.
Yeah, you
The
left.
solution, the solution for me, like I said, was making a lot of the things that I do right now with my patients,
Mhm.
nutrition changes, fitness changes, mindset, and actually fueling the body, leaving that mindset
Mm.
of the deprivation of the 1200 calories. And like I said, not diet shaming. I mean, definitely I'm
Yeah.
not into the diets and the gimmicks, but the whole mindset of restricting our body to heal. I've really shifted to that, and it's more shifted from that, and it's more to what can I bring into my body to heal my hormones naturally? What can
Mm.
I do to really get to the root of the problem? May it be some functional testing to see where my hormones are at? Possibly I need to work on my gut health. When we think gut
Yeah.
health, a lot of people think, ooh, a probiotic. Ooh, I drink kefir. Oh, I take yogurt. Yes, and those things can be helpful, but sometimes when you're dealing with that chronic systemic inflammation throughout your entire body, you need a more specialized approach. So it's coming
Mm.
away from the cookie cutter, lose 5 pounds to do this. Oh, you want to sleep better? Take a couple melatonin. It's moving away from that, even in the natural space, a pill for every ill, and
Mhm.
really getting down to the root of the problem and giving you that blueprint so that when you wake up every morning, you have your toolbox, and maybe you are still diagnosed with PCOS, endometriosis, fibroids.
Yeah.
Maybe you still have lupus, arthritis, etc. But when you're working with me, you wake up with a toolbox that
Mm.
really has you, like I said, stepping from being at war with your body every single day to actually being a conqueror and waking up with that, that badass toolbox that you have that will put you in the driver's seat of your health, where you're not just going along and being in the back seat, kind of like Uber, right? Where your
Yeah.
hormones are driving you all around and
Yeah.
your illness is really dictating what you do, but it's allowing you to get in the driver's seat of your health.
Yeah, and you're doing that in how you work with people now through like blood panels, is that right? And like individualizing the approach for them?
Yes, so we do use some blood work. I do probably, when it comes to the hormones, I do more of the Dutch test, which is the urine. So that's kind of a
Okay.
newer thing, right?
Okay, tell
People
us
are like,
about that.
urine?
What?
What's
All
going
right.
on? So this is amazing. Perfect segue. So I do have an episode coming out next week. So I have a podcast, which is the Holistic with the W Endo
Okay.
Expert Podcast. And I've got my girl, Dr. Carrie Jones, coming on, the expert when it comes to the Dutch test. And we talk about how
Nice.
maximizing the Dutch test, which is the dried urine test, to check in on the hormones, see what's going on, not just where your hormone levels are at, but how
Yeah.
your body is metabolizing them. There's a
Okay.
lot that goes on with that, which is why I know I see your face. You're like, what? I know it. That's
No,
like a
it
whole
sounds
nother
cool.
hour.
It sounds really cool. I'm like, huh,
Yeah,
this
but
is,
it,
I
it
didn't know.
really helps you as far as functional medicine, right? I
Okay.
love the blood work. I think it can be helpful, but blood work, how many times, and I'll even ask you, how many times have you had blood work that looked okay, but you're like, but I just don't feel like something just
Yeah.
feels off.
Well, I'm like infamously like anti going to doctors, unfortunately.
Right?
I'm one of those. But yes, the one time when I was suffering so hard, and this was way back in my 20s, of like couldn't lose weight, didn't understand what was going on. My mother became convinced that it was my thyroid because she has thyroid issues. And she's like, I'm sure it's your thyroid. Like, I'm positive it's your thyroid. So I remember going to like a private clinic to get my blood work done on, I had to like pay all this money at the time, and, I'm a college student and all that. And I go and yeah, and then bring it to a doctor, and yeah. And the doctor's like, nope, you're fine. We don't see anything. There's nothing in here, and I gave up on it. I never went back and tried to do that again. And yeah, I've not even carried that around like as a part of my story of that. But yeah, so yes, the one time that I decided to get help for blood work, yes, it was completely dismissed.
And I love it. Your one time versus my probably 500 appointments in my lifetime. So one time to 500 people.
Yeah.
Find yourself in there. That is where you will see that the I'm fine when you don't feel fine.
Yeah.
That is why I really love to test and don't guess. Blood work can be important, but when it comes to hormones, I love to do the Dutch test. Also, if you're having, GI issues, being able to look into it. I know some of it's not so sexy, but say it again.
The poop test.
Yes, I was like, not so sexy, the stool test, but I'm telling you the answers that you get from it and able to turn your life around, baby, it's totally worth it.
Well, and there's a whole industry cropping up around these tests that you can do at home now.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And you want to be able to do them, but I think the thing is also making sure you have someone that can interpret it. So I think there's like like you send the kid off, the head, because I've had people come to me and they're like, hey, I've done all this testing. And I'm like, oh, okay. And they're like, what does it mean? And they're just like ordering every kit. So it's like, make sure you also have someone that you can work with to interpret it, because I mean, it's a gold mine, but you need to know like what to do next. And you definitely don't want to be bringing in herbs and supplements if you're not trained in that, if you're not, really knowing what's going on.
Well, and also what I've learned from all the interviews I've done on this podcast is that like getting your blood panels done, even your hormonal blood panel, all of that done, and then taking it to a doctor absolutely does not mean that they are going to pick up on what's going on with you, unless you go to a specific type of practitioner that's going to look for, real markers in that a regular MD that's not specialized would not be looking at.
Right. And that's kind of where I come in. I kind of help you connect the dots. Once again, coming from my own story where I had the acne, right? So I had the dermatologist, I had the back pain. So I had the pain management, I had the pelvic pain, had the OB, had this, that, but it's like I needed someone to bring all those pieces together. So for me, getting the diagnosis of endometriosis really just heightened to where I have to have everyone on my medical team working together. I can't just have an OB. It's kind of like, a dentist. Okay, you may have an amazing dentist, but that doesn't mean that you're not going to need to go to your PCP. Like everything is connected. We were joking about it on another podcast, but it's like it comes, I hate to say it, but the head is still connected to the body. And sometimes we want to silo all of these different things, and it's bringing it together is where you can really find the healing wins.
I love that. Well, thank you so much, Dr. LJ Johnson. If people want to get in touch with you, I'm going to put all of this in the show notes, but do you have like a website or Instagram handle you want to shout out in case?
Yes. I love my Instagram. Lots of free content. If you love Instagram, if you love social media. So LJS_powerhouse is my Instagram. Like I said, lots of free stuff over there. There's also a link there if you want to work with me. Maybe you want to hop on a free discovery call. Maybe you're listening and you're like, ooh, this is a crazy story, but I got some of this stuff going on in my world, and you just want to chat and just have a fresh set of eyes on your situation. We'll definitely, click the links and check it out. And I'm definitely just here to support and educate and empower. My main thing I would leave you with is just whatever your diagnosis is, you're more than that. You just need the blueprint to maximize your life.
I love that. Thank you so much.